I don't know what to expect in this game, quite frankly, but I do think on the Tennessee side, they view it as their best shot. And not that they won't have another one, but this is a big moment for Tennessee.
Hello and welcome. It's always college football. It is Wednesday, September 10th, and we so greatly appreciate y'all being here with us today. We love our Wednesday show. It's maybe not quite as in the weeds as we do on Thursday when we do our previews, maybe not as in the weeds as Monday when we're doing our top 10 takeaways. So Wednesday is the perfect mix of big picture conversation and going through our rankings. Who doesn't like a top 25 rankings? We will unveil our rankings after week 2 here momentarily. We also will be joined by Paul Finebaum to kind of talk about next week's conversations today. That's kind of looking ahead, forecasting where things are going. If this outcome happens, what's the reaction? Nobody can speak to the reactions better than Paul Finebaum. We look forward to our visit with him here in just a moment. Before we get to the rankings, let me tell you quickly to just go and subscribe to the podcast. I cannot tell you that enough. The podcast numbers are setting records for us. We have had more people download the podcast than ever before, and that's because you guys, our incredible listeners, are doing their job. You're telling people about Always College Football. We don't have a marketing budget. We don't have constantly pushing it in a million different directions. We simply are just trying to serve the audience. That's all we're trying to do. And we very much appreciate those of you that are telling people about the good work we're doing here. If you could, while you're there, rate the show on the podcast platform of your choosing. And for those of you that are here with us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page, thank y'all again for being here. All right, let's kick it off. Our second edition of rankings. Now, there's going to be some people very mad. That's the beauty of it. But we think that you should start from scratch every week when you put your rankings out into the stratosphere. Let's kick it off with our number one team. No changes at the top for us. Ohio State was number one last week. They remain number one. They continue to have the number one strength of record. Their win against Texas, I think, is the best win in college football. Going on and absolutely demolishing their week 2 opponent only reinforces their number one status. So Ohio this week, they sit there in firm control at the top of the college football world as our number one team. At number 2, big change this week, the Oregon Ducks. They had the most impressive win of week 2, just a complete record-setting blowout against a team that's in the Power 4. And people will sit there and say, well, Oklahoma State's not very good. Just watch the level of execution. Watch the athleticism. The quarterback was a question mark coming into the season. I think he's a legitimate strength. Look at the weaponry that's starting to emerge. Look at how they tee off defensively. Look how uncomfortable Oklahoma State was from start to finish in that game. So we had Oregon number 5 last week. That I thought was a pretty good place for them to be. I now move them all the way up to number 2 with a resounding and dominant week 2 performance. At number 3, the LSU Tigers. I had them at number 2 last week. I've now dropped them down one spot. Uninspired offensive performance a little bit against a lesser opponent in Louisiana Tech slides them down one spot. The other thing that affects LSU's evaluation is that Clemson didn't look very good in their week 2 game against the Troy Trojans. So LSU, they slide down just one spot, still pretty good spot to be, but they have Florida this week at home to further solidify what's been a really nice start for the national championship hopeful LSU Tigers. At number 4, it's the Miami Hurricanes. They slide up from number 6 to number 4 for us. They were the only team in the top 6 last week that went out and just took care of business. So therefore, they're going to jump Penn State. They're going to jump Georgia. They have USF this week too, by the way, which could only strengthen what they have on their schedule because USF has gone out and done a really nice job. So you get a win against USF, a ranked team, or might be a ranked team, might be a playoff contender by season's end. You got a win already against Notre Dame, a team that I still have tons of respect for. Miami, I think, is appropriately ranked in the top 4. They are number 4 with the demolition of Bethune-Cookman in week number 2. At number 5, one of the biggest movers of the week, the Oklahoma Sooners. A dominant, resume-defining victory in the only first ranked matchup of the entire season. What I think is so laughable, like I look at the AP poll. Right now, the AP poll has Oklahoma at number 13. I mean, that is genuinely laughable. They're behind Clemson, for crying out loud. Like, Clemson, through 6 quarters, looked lifeless. Oklahoma goes out and convincingly beats Michigan. And by the way, it could have been worse if not for a couple of mistakes in the game, a turnover or two in the game, giving Michigan new lease on life a few times in the game. That thing could have been worse. There were plays left in the field. So if I'm grading Oklahoma's performance last week, it's probably like a B+, like really good win, great on defense, but there's more in the tank there. Oklahoma comes all the way up from 14, where we had them last week, into the top 5. Very few teams with a better win. Very few teams that can beat you in as many ways as Oklahoma can beat you through the first 2 weeks of the season. They're at Temple this week. That will do nothing to enhance my prediction and evaluation of the Oklahoma Sooners. Penn State is in at number 6. I had them at number 3 last week. Yes, shutout, but their strength of schedule is embarrassing. Like this week, their murderous row of non-conference continues with Villanova. And last week, frankly, the first half of that game wasn't that great to begin with. Like, there's still more in the tank for Penn State, and I think they're kind of playing with their food a bit. But I want to see a 4-quarter performance from Penn State. 4 quarters. And I don't care if it's against Villanova. I don't care if it's against Ohio State. I just want to see 4 quarters put together. And then they can get back. Because I still think on paper, I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I just haven't seen it yet. So kind of got to see it to believe it. So I can believe all I want, but I got to see it. At number 7, it's the Georgia Bulldogs. They were at number 4 last week. I thought it was sluggish. Now, they ended up winning the game. They're at Tennessee this week, so we'll learn all we need to know about the Georgia Bulldogs, but I have questions about their pass protection. I have questions about their passing game. I have questions about their offensive creativity. Like, those are legitimate questions right now. And all those can be alleviated with a good win on the road at Tennessee this week. So everything is right in front of Georgia, but right now I've dropped them down in my rankings all the way to number 7 from number 4 a week ago. At number 8, it's the Texas Longhorns. They were number 7 last week. I dropped them back just a little bit sloppy in some areas last week. I thought it was a strong bounce back performance from March Manning. I thought he played much better from week 1 to week 2. I still think the ceiling's really high for this unit. I really like what they have on the defensive side. They'll play UTEP this week. I won't learn anything about them, but I still think Texas is very much a player for the national championship. I have them at number 8. At number 9, the Florida State Seminoles. Very few teams were as dominant as they were last week. A lot of people laughed at me and said, well, you're putting them in the top 10 based on what? Just watch them. Like, watch how they execute, watch the level of efficiency, and look at this past week when they not just showed their ceiling, but we've seen in the past Florida State be in dogfights against less than stellar competition. That was not the case last week. They're 49-0 at halftime. And Florida State is on a mission this year, and I've loved what I've seen so far. That's why they live currently in the top 10. They're at number 9. I know a bye this week, so we'll see where they are in a couple weeks. So no Florida State this week, but they are comfortably in the top 10. Nothing's changed my opinion on that. At number 10, the Illinois Fighting Illini. I had them at number 19 last week. I thought they had one of the better wins of the week last week. I actually like Duke a lot better than most other people. I especially like, though, when teams go on the road and handle their business. And then I love teams that display a killer instinct that allow the other team to make a mistake or two, but they don't let them off the hook for that. Like, Illinois just went out there and said, forget about it. You want to turn it over 5 times? By all means, give us another chance. We're going to pour it on you, and they did. That, to me, displays a level of killer instinct that is hard to find from time to time. Now, they'll have Western Michigan this week, but I think Illinois is a top 10 football team based on what I've seen the first couple weeks of the season. At number 11, it's the Utah Utes. I had them at 10 last week. They do have a win against UCLA, but that win does not look as good today as it did last week. I had them at 10, dropped them down just 1 spot. Had to make room for a couple teams. I had to make room for Illinois, and I had to make room for the Oklahoma Sooners. So Utah drops down just 1 spot. Still really like them. They're on the road at Wyoming this week. At number 12, it's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were number 10 last week. Didn't play. We'll find out all we need to know this week. That's against Texas A&M. They're at home. Things should be in a really good spot for Notre Dame. I like how things set up for them against the Aggies. I think they get back to running the football. I think they get back to playing good, solid man defense. I'm very excited about that game. I think that's got a real opportunity for Notre Dame to kind of showcase, hey, man, we are exactly who we've always been. We had a tough game week 1, but guess what? We're still a national championship contender. I think they have a chance to show that this week against the Aggies. They sit at number 12. At number 13, the biggest mover of the entire weekend. That is the USF Bulls. They were unranked last week. Probably not a huge surprise. I don't think anybody had them ranked last week, but going on the road and beating the Florida Gators the way they beat the Florida Gators, they gained the Florida Gators. They forced a couple mistakes against the Florida Gators. They were opportunistic. Yeah, Florida made some mistakes. Yeah, Florida had a couple penalties. Guess what? We're going to take advantage. USF did that. I also think they have a difference maker at quarterback. And if we're going on resumes, how many people have a better resume than USF? They have the number 3 strength of record so far this year. And they're at Miami this week. And what should be a really entertaining game. You know I love Miami. Now we'll really find out about USF. Can they do it again? 3 weeks in a row? If they can, it'd be historically significant. They'll vault all the way in the top 5, potentially, if they can go on the road and get this win against the Hurricanes. At number 14, it's the Tennessee Volunteers. I had them at 13 last week. Part of the reason why I dropped them down just a little bit is the win against Syracuse doesn't look quite as good. But we're going to learn all we need to know about Tennessee. Syracuse, of course, looks human, so maybe that is an indictment on Tennessee. I have no idea. But I really like what I've seen so far from the Volunteers. They'll host the Georgia Bulldogs, and it'll be a great opportunity for them to show just how far they've come, because they have not played well against the Georgia Bulldogs in the past. They have struggled in the Josh Heupel tenure. Can they be better in what should be a very entertaining scene there in Neyland Stadium? At number 15, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. I had them at 22 last week. I actually thought Ole Miss played about as bad as they could in the first quarter. Yet they still won on the road with a -2 turnover margin, and they've actually beaten a team with a pulse. Now, you can say what you want about Kentucky, but Kentucky is a physical bruiser type of team. Ole Miss didn't like that type of team last year. Against bruiser type of teams, they didn't play very well. They showed growth in that department last week and didn't even play well, and yet still got a good victory. They jump up from 22 all the way to 15, but there are some teams that were in front of them that also dropped down. So it's not necessarily an overreaction to the Kentucky win. It's more of an indictment to the teams that slid past where Ole Miss currently resides. They'll host Arkansas this week. At number 16, it's the Auburn Tigers. I had them at number 20 last week. Here's the reason why. Their win against Baylor just got better. They spent some time this past week working on the passing game, and when Baylor beat SMU, guess what that did? That strengthened Auburn's resume. They moved from 20 to 16, and some other teams moved behind them. At number 17, a team that was unranked last week, the Vanderbilt Commodores. Answer me this. Who looked better against Virginia Tech? Was it Vandy or South Carolina? Now, here's the beauty. Vandy's at South Carolina this weekend, so we'll find out all we need to know about Vandy and about South Carolina. I look at number 18. That's South Carolina. I had them at number 11 last week. I have now slid them down. Why? Because that Virginia Tech win doesn't look nearly as good. They also, offensively, not a great rhythm. There's still some things to iron out on that side of the ball. I'm be really curious to see how things go for South Carolina this week, because I think Vandy coming to town, that could be a tricky one. It could be a hard game. This is going to be a real indicator of just how far South Carolina's come. If they can go and take care of business at home, they'll be in a great spot. They'll be back ranked in the top 10, 12, 13, 14. But right now, based on like opponents, Vandy looked better against Virginia Tech on the road than South Carolina looked against Virginia Tech in a neutral site. Therefore, Vandy 17, South Carolina 18. At number 19, it's the USC Trojans. I've had them at 17 last week. I know they haven't played anybody, but just watch them. Just watch them. Look at the efficiency that Jaden Mayava's playing with. Look at the firepower they have on the outside. This is a team that is being painfully disrespected in the AP poll. Just watch them. I understand that it hasn't been against a team with the pulse just yet. I get that. But if you watch them, I promise you, you will be impressed. They'll go on the road to Purdue this week, so maybe we won't learn a whole lot about them. But I do think SC's in a really nice position to be third in the Big Ten, maybe fourth in the Big Ten. We'll see where it all irons out as the season goes along. At number 20, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were unranked last week. First thing about this, I think Florida State's really, really good. So if we fast forward to the end of the season, I don't think we're going to look at that loss to Florida State as a terrible loss. I also liked last week that Alabama's talent came to the forefront. They didn't mess around. They didn't play with their food. They came out and they played inspired football. Now they hopefully can carry over some of that momentum into a home tilt against Wisconsin, another Power 5 opponent, another opportunity to kind of showcase how much they've grown. This will be a good test for them. So Alabama's right now at 20, but still will be a lot to learn about the Tide this weekend. At 21, it's Iowa State. I had them at 16 last week. The reason why they've dropped now 5 spots is that win against Kansas State doesn't look quite as good. Kansas State loses to Army. They're now 1-2. They didn't look great in their week 2 win either. I honestly don't think Iowa's very good either after watching them. I think Iowa's quarterback situation is problematic. I think their offense lacks a clear identity. They do have Arkansas State this week. Iowa State's still very much in the driver's seat in the Big 12, but I think there's quite a bit to iron out, and I'm not sure the level of competition that they've played against up to this point is as good as some of the teams that sit right in front of them. At 22, it's the Clemson Tigers. This is where they should be ranked, by the way. Like the AP poll has them at 12. I don't know how. And it's not an indictment on what they could become. It's an indictment on what I've seen so far. Like it's fine. Like I loved Clemson in the preseason. I had them number 1 in my preseason poll. I still have a lot of respect for what this team could accomplish. But what I've seen so far is just not good enough. What I've seen so far is a team that's 1-1 that has struggled to be really consistent offensively. What I've seen so far is an offensive line that has had some challenges. So I need to see more from Clemson. So I had them at 12 last week. I've now dropped them all the way to 22. And they're in earn it mode from this point forward. The good news is they have a great opportunity for them this week to go on the road to a really solid Georgia Tech team and to reestablish dominance in the ACC. At number 23, it's the Missouri Tigers. They were unranked last week by me. They have themselves a quarterback in Bo Prabula. Defense a little bit shaky last week from time to time. They'll face Louisiana this week, but this is a team that should be in the top 25. That was a good win against a Kansas team that I think is pretty good and has a lot of firepower offensively. At number 24, probably a massive overreaction here. I'm sure people will have that same reaction. Mississippi State. How many teams have a win that's better than Mississippi State? I'm just saying. And that if you look at the first half of that game, yes, adjustments were made in the second half. They didn't play as well in the second half. They got out to a decisive lead. It's a team that belongs to the top 25, in my opinion. They go and get a win against a playoff team from a year ago in Arizona State, and we'll find out what Arizona State is as the season goes along. Could very well, if Arizona State loses a couple more games, guess what? Mississippi State will drop out. But right now, that's a really good win against a team that I still have a lot of respect for. And making their quarterback, who I love, and Sam Leavitt, making him as uncomfortable as he was at times in that game has me feeling very optimistic about the progress that Mississippi State's made on defense, and I still think they could score. They've always been able to score. As long as Jeff Levy's calling plays, they'll be able to score. And at number 25, last but certainly not least, it's the TCU Horned Frogs. This is a team that I had 24th last week. I don't know if they're better than A&M, Indiana, Texas Tech, but at least they've played a Power 4 opponent and made mincemeat of North Carolina in the process. So you get credit, by the way, in my world, for actually challenging yourself and going on the road and winning against P4 competition. Teams that dropped out from last week, the 15th ranked Michigan Wolverines. They wouldn't be out by much, though. If I had kind of a next man up, they'd be right there. I think there's plenty still in the tank for Michigan, but I think they can improve in a lot of areas before I could put them back in the top 25. I also dropped Arizona State out of the top 25. They were 18th last week. I had Florida at 20. I've dropped them out of the top 25. I had Texas A&M at 23. I've dropped them out of the top 25. And I had Texas Tech. I dropped them out of the top 25. They haven't played anybody. I'm going to reward teams in my top 25 that have challenged themselves in the non-conference up to this point. I also have Indiana unranked. They haven't played anybody. Yeah, they look better in week 2. They haven't played anybody. So until I see them against real live competition, Power 4 competition, it's hard for me to rank them in the top 25. Well, he needs no introduction. You can see him on the ESPN family of networks, the Paul Finebaum show. You can see him as a regular contributor to Get Up. And I don't think you are necessarily the Grim Reaper that you once were, Paul. Like, you're not going out of your way to just get people canned or anything anymore, are you? You've grown past that.
No, I mean, you reach a certain point, Greg, where you actually appreciate what you're covering, and you've been a tremendous influence on me. And it really took just getting behind the scenes here. It took getting away from Mark Kubiak, the producer of this show, for me to realize that I didn't have to be the Grim Reaper every day of my life.
It's amazing that he produced the show as long as he did, and yet has a remarkable disdain for the Southeastern Conference as a diehard Notre Dame fan. Paul, what we like to do on our Wednesday show is kind of have next week's conversations today. So let's just kind of play as if outcomes have gone down this past weekend or this upcoming weekend, and we'll have those conversations. Let's start with Clemson. They played Georgia Tech this weekend. They were a trendy pick to win the national championship. They were a trendy pick to be the number one team in the country coming in. I loved them coming in. I have been remarkably disappointed in the first 6 quarters of their season, a little better in the last 2. What's the narrative for Dabo Swinney and Clemson in the event in which they lose to Georgia Tech on Saturday morning?
I think it would be pretty negative. What's bothersome if you're a fan of Dabo is that so much of the ill will from the past came back. It looked like he had outsmarted the rest of college football with the team, and that all seemed to slip away, and it would slip away even more because he would be literally on life support for the CFP with a loss this weekend. And I think. Last Saturday, I don't pay a lot of attention to games like that, even though it was scary for a Clemson fan. But I was really underwhelmed and really shocked, quite frankly, Greg, at how Klubnik played against LSU. I know he's had propensity to struggle sometimes in the first game of the season. I don't know why you do that at his point. But this is really a big weekend for them. You can't look much worse in the first 2 weeks, and after a lot of people picking them to win it all.
Yeah, they got a lot to prove, and I think Cade Klubnik will probably be the first to admit, like, yeah, I got to be better. Quarterback play has got to be better for Clemson, because if they can't run the ball and they can't protect, quarterback's going to have to elevate them, and that has not happened here in the first 2 games. We'll go next to another game that's going to be played noon Eastern time, Alabama and Wisconsin. Look, we all know and we all heard callers into your show what the reaction was after the week 1 loss to Florida State. Now, I think Florida State's pretty good. I think people have kind of come to terms with that. But how convincing does Alabama's victory on Saturday need to be for people to kind of sigh of relief, to kind of relax about where this team might be heading under Kalen DeBoer?
I think it would be helpful. It's not essential because then there's a week off and then there's Georgia, which corrects everything one way or the other. I thought the La Monroe game for an off-brand game did Alabama a lot of good. It just gave reason to believe again, and sometimes fan bases need that. I felt like the Alabama fan base has come back a long way in 1 week. It can yin and yang very often, and I think this is a game that nobody is looking at like what we would have maybe with Ron Dane, running in the backfield for Wisconsin. But I do think it will matter because it's a Big Ten game. So I expect Alabama to play well. I just, for the life of me, can't understand the performance in the first week. Doesn't really matter anymore, though.
If they win, let's say by 14, will people be back like losing their minds, or do you think they'll be content with, hey, survive in advance, take a week off, let's get ready for Georgia?
I think they just need to survive. I don't think there's a number. I thought last week was maybe more important just to go out there and play a near perfect game, and they did. Um, I mean, by the way, Bama fans, as much as we both love them, are not going to really determine anything right now. It's the guys wearing the uniform on the field, and I think what's going a win here, as long as it's decent, I think will give them a break during the off week. But I can already predict if the confidence comes back, what Alabama fans are going to be saying the week of the Georgia game, and they're going to have a swagger because they really do believe they own Georgia now. We can snicker, but the record lately, for the most part, backs that up.
Yeah, it's fair. Let's go to Georgia, who, by the way, I think is not like a well-oiled machine so far at this point. A lot of people are criticizing their offense, their offensive approach, their firepower, their unwillingness to throw the ball down the field, all this other stuff. Let's say they go on the road and get beat by Tennessee. What's kind of the reaction around Georgia's program?
Yeah, they will suddenly become this week's overreaction, Greg. Their fans have been on a little bit of an edge for a while. In the offseason, they went all in on Gunnar Stockton, even the ones that just could not stand him last year. But that's fandom. We both have seen enough of it. It doesn't matter a whole lot. But this is a really big game for Kirby Smart because yeah, Tennessee's still undefined a little bit. We think they're pretty good. We don't know that for a fact. And that has been one of the most amazing aspects of Georgia's runs in the last 8 or 9 years is, they have, their dominance over Florida, their dominance over Tennessee has been pretty remarkable. And that game last year, as you well know, uh, there was a fog over that place going into the game because of what had happened the previous week against Ole Miss, and Carson Beck came through. The defense came through in the second half, and I don't know what to expect in this game, quite frankly, but I do think on the Tennessee side they view it as their best shot, and not that they won't have another one, but this is a big moment for Tennessee.
If they get a win, what's the reaction?
I think the reaction for Tennessee is pretty remarkable. I think they're already feeling great. They're measuring their record right now on what it is, which is 2-0, and what UCLA's is, which is 0-2. And I mean, they feel great now. It doesn't matter anymore. Nico no longer becomes the subplot. That's over. But Joey Aguilar feels good about where he is, and I think for Josh Heupel, who's done just about everything you have to do, beating Georgia would be that final check mark.
In the event in which Georgia goes and wins by 2 touchdowns, is there any type of fallout on Tennessee's side?
Not yet. I mean, it is Georgia, but suddenly you start playing with the schedule and looking at it. I think Tennessee fans, although I will offer this, uh, they're a playoff team from a year ago, but it just doesn't really feel like it. Maybe because that experience in Columbus was so bad.
It's fair enough for sure. You referenced Carson Beck a moment ago. He now is thriving at Miami, albeit against lesser competition last week, but he looked really good against Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. They have South Florida this week, who's become kind of the darling of college football. First and foremost, do you think USF has a puncher's chance? And secondly, in the event in which Miami wins, is that a feather in the cap for the ACC as a whole?
No, I mean, I do think they have a puncher's chance. I mean, they have been so resilient. Now, they've been fortunate. I know we'll get to them, but it took a lot to win that game. And mostly it took a completely dumb moment by a player and a typical dumb performance by Billy Napier. So I think it would count like everything against USF counts a lot more. But Miami right now is thinking of themselves as a legitimate contender to get in the playoffs, and they just need to survive this one. This is not about anything pretty. Not with the Gators coming to town soon.
And with the Carson Beck angle, you referenced Gunnar Stockton, and you also, in talking about Tennessee, talked about what UCLA is doing and how Tennessee fans are watching Nico Iamaleava and they're 0-2 and all this stuff. Are Georgia fans actually paying attention to what Miami's doing? Do they care what Carson Beck's doing?
I don't think they care as much because they were pretty comfortable with with Tim leaving. I mean, Carson was ready to leave. He left. Nobody really, felt like they had been betrayed, and I think they were kind of over him. I mean, listen, I don't think they really wanted him back. They may regret that, but I don't think they really cared at the time, nor do I think they care a whole lot now.
Moving over to Florida, who was on the losing end of that USF game. And look, Billy Napier is enduring a lot of criticism. I feel like every week is a different coach that's on the hot seat. It's kind of remarkable. It's his turn. But is it real this time based on their performance?
Yes, I believe it is. I think it was real last year. It just so happened that he managed to take advantage of Ole Miss, of LSU, of a very weak FSU team, and went on this run that was exciting. I mean, beating Ole Miss and LSU at home really mattered. It helped, and Scott Strickland helped him too by dialing up that vote of confidence at just the right time. Well, actually, it wasn't just the right time; it was the day of the Texas loss, but he got through it. And Lagway coming back was really the ticket that every Florida fan felt great about. But Greg, we talked about it on your show, and I know you talked about it here. Likeway was always a mystery. I just didn't expect the Gators to look so inept at various points on the field. And to me, the Napier thing, I mean, he's 20-20 in his fourth year. We know we know what happened to every other coach with far better records. Now, the only thing that will save him if Florida decides to start thinking like a mid-level team and be happy with mediocrity. Uh, but I don't think Gator fans are going to be happy with that, based on couple of shows so far this week that I've encountered.
If they go and get a win at LSU, I mean, that'd be remarkable. And they beat them last year, but they haven't won in Baton Rouge since 2016. Does that quiet the noise, or does it permeate regardless?
Well, it does. It does quiet the noise because it's a game of math right now, and with the schedule that they have, everyone knows what it is. You've got to steal a win back, and that would be one. And if you look at LSU's schedule, if you look at Florida's schedule, you would have to conclude this is one of the toughest games of the year at night at Tiger Stadium. So yeah, but I mean, fan bases are always erratic, Greg. So. They'll come back a little bit, but they'll start asking like, how did we blow that game the previous week?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair. Brian Kelly, on the other hand, he's riding high and things look good. He seems like, by the way, he's got a little swagger. Does he not? I mean, there's something about Brian Kelly that it's been fun to watch, frankly. And there's been a lot of goodwill built up after the win against Clemson. In the event in which they come up short against Florida, is it kind of back to square one for LSU? It picked up so much goodwill in these first 2 weeks.
He does have swagger. I talked to him on Monday, and I asked him about the Dabo situation, and he said, "Well, I don't know. I was just answering a question, but I'm trying to help the media. You know how coaches like try to help the media. We saw what Sarkisian did this week. The point is that it's hard to really think about that moment because it's like I said a couple of minutes ago. You kind of give back what you got. I mean, you go out there and win one of the toughest games of the year, and then you throw it away. But the great part about the 12-team playoff, if I can play that melody right here, is that you can always have time. But this is not the game that I would try to lose, especially with road games later on at Ole Miss and at Alabama. You're don't do it, BK. It's this would be the wrong one.
Understandable. Notre Dame is hosting Texas A&M. It feels like a must-win for the Irish. They currently don't have a team on their schedule that's ranked in the top 25. That can obviously change depending on what happens with some of these teams down the stretch. But do you think, in the event in which Notre Dame loses this game and they start the season 0-2, and they don't have the strength of schedule built up down the stretch, can they overcome a loss against both A&M and Miami, who are two of the best teams on their schedule?
The only way they could do that is if they get a lot of help, and they would need Southern Cal to be great. I'm trying to think who else could help them on the schedule, but they really they'd have to get help. And I think they would really be in a terribly awkward spot. Now, if A&M has a good run, then those could be two really great losses. So that would be they need a big win over a ranked SC, and they would need A&M and Miami to be serious contenders.
On the other side, if A&M gets beat convincingly, it feels like there's been progress made. I feel like the fan base is very happy with what they've seen from Mike Elko up to this point. But if they get beat badly by Notre Dame, all that goodwill could be lost. I mean, what does things look like for A&M if they lose this game?
Yeah, I don't think the pressure is nearly as much. Elko is really well liked. You've done games there. He's got it going. A&M's also not a program that measures itself at the 99th percentile either. I mean, they have, for whatever reason just have struggled to get back into that position. So I don't think this is do or die. I don't think the A&M folks jump off the cliff. Uh, to me, that they are pretty grounded in knowing that this game, it's not insurmountable, but it's going to be a very tough win.
Do you have a lean in that game, Paul? Just curious.
Notre Dame. By the way, you're asking a guy that I think missed every prediction the week one. So I'll be more. I want to warn the audience there if you go before you go to the teller.
Yeah, but there's been a bunch of games, Paul, these last couple of weeks that are just They're bottom feeder games. I don't really know how to describe it. And while I found a lot of value and excitement in some of the matchups last week, they lacked kind of the sex appeal. And it feels like the matchups that we saw in week 2, those are not long for the sport. I feel like we are going to move in a direction where we're going to have more power four, where it might exclusively be power four versus power four matchups every single week, where it's either in conference or you're playing against a big boy from another league. How close are we to getting to that point?
I think we're pretty close. And listen, this is a great television sport, and we watch television on Saturday afternoon and evening by looking at scores. If my game's not any good, I'm going to go to the game that is good. And you just can't have a lot of bad games. And we had. I mean, I know there were some great moments last weekend, but going in, the schedule was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And we don't need that. And I think the only answer is an expanded playoff. And I'm not crazy about 16 or whatever Tony Petitti is throwing out there against the wall. But I think we have to protect the relationships with networks, and we have to protect the fans because you know fans spend an enormous amount of money. I was with a fan at the airport the other day, and he was telling me what he was spending. And Greg, I know that you get in the side gate with security, and I kind of lean off the TV. But the average fan to go to any game is spending tremendous amount of dollars, and there has to be a value for that as opposed to just watching some mundane 73 to nothing game.
Yeah, understandable. I'm sure you paid for a lot of tickets. You take a subtle shot at me. When was last year you took you? When was last year you paid for a ticket, Paul?
A number of years ago, our friend Pat Smith, we were in New Orleans, and we decided to go to the Saints playoff game. And I mistakenly said, I'll take care of the tickets. I had no earthly idea what they cost. I swear. I'm like the, remember about 20 or 30 years ago, the president went to a grocery store and he said, milk costs $4. I mean, that's how I felt. But I spent the money. I ate it. I had fun. I didn't like spending that. I mean, it was outrageous, and that was a long time ago. So don't let me go
Understandable.
on a rant about ticket
I'm
prices.
sure inflation has impacted those prices even more, but the Saints' quality of play might have a bit of an impact on that
You
as
don't have to
well.
worry about that anymore.
Yeah, I think you're good. You can get in the door, whatever you want. Finally, Paul, we'll get you out of here with this big one on the Big Ten Network, primetime, the 7:30 kick. It's UMass at Iowa. Give me your point total.
UMass Iowa, I'd say the point total 34.
That's actually higher than I would have thought you were going to go. I didn't know you were going that high.
Well, Kirk Ferentz coming off of a tough start to the season. I think he's gonna run wild.
I love it, Paul. Finally, last. I know I said that was the last one, but I'll ask you one more. You look at the supremacy arguments being made by conferences right now. It's mostly Big Ten, SEC. I get that. But we kind of know what the pecking order is, however you feel. If Big Ten, the highest levels of the Big Ten, are they better than the highest levels of the SEC? Perhaps. Who knows? We'll see how it plays out as the season goes along. But where do you kind of see the ACC? Where do you kind of see the Big 12 right now in the grand scheme of things?
I think they're both a little. I mean, listen. First of all, I find the Big Ten versus SEC conversation a little bit overdone, especially those writing the SEC off because the Big Ten has three of the top five. It means absolutely nothing right now. I thought the SMU loss really hurt the ACC the other day. I've looked at them as a really high quality team. I think Arizona State losing to Mississippi State from I mean the treetop games I think have really banged them up a little bit. Kansas State biggest I mean I don't know how to quantify what's going on there. Kansas losing to Missouri, so I think they I was pretty high on the Big 12 3 weeks ago. I'm pulling back a little bit, and the ACC. I think Miami, Florida State, and I really do believe Clemson will acquit itself. I think they're good conferences. I'm not going to sound like people expect me to sound, and oh, they're terrible. They don't play good. They do. I've grown up as I've grown older, um, but I don't think they're very deep, like some of their media likes to make them out to be.
How deep is the Big Ten?
I don't think they're very deep either. Again, call me when you see Penn State play a junior high team, and I'll give you an evaluation of what everybody thinks could be the best team in the country. We know Oregon, we know Ohio State. But I don't think they go very deep. I'd like to see more from Southern Cal, but to me, uh, I know I'm sitting in front of an SEC emblem here, but I think the SEC had a really big weekend last week, and I think it was because of the bottom. Vanderbilt winning at Virginia Tech. I mean, that was a crushing blow for a lot of reasons. The Arizona State game. I mean, that to me indicates that the SEC is very deep, and there really isn't a league like that. And I don't like to play the 1 to 16 game. I think most of us gravitate to what's at the top, but I think right now the SEC doesn't need to apologize for anything.
No, it's great stuff, Paul. Tremendous perspective. Always appreciate your time, my friend, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Greg.
We really appreciate Paul Finebaum and appreciate you guys very much for the time that you spent with us today, talking a little ranking, putting some real perspective on the ranking and actually changing it week to week, as opposed to, well, this team won, but it didn't win great. We'll move them down one spot. No, like, we need to reevaluate every week and adjust every week. And that's what we will do here on Always College Football. We will reward teams that look great, and we will penalize teams that don't. And we will reward teams that take chances by playing quality competition, and we will penalize teams that don't. That's what we'll do, and we will continue to here on a Wednesday edition of Always College Football. So continue to go to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, like the podcast, rate the podcast, and see us on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. So for all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.